Crossfire. On the left, Tom Braden. On the right, Robert Novak. In the Crossfire, Washington Times columnist John Lofton and rock musician Frank Zappa.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. What you've got here is suggestive, and I don't find it objectionable. But when you actually listen to the words of the songs, you get a shock. Personally, I find some of them in such bad taste as to make me physically ill, and some of them I wouldn't have in the house. Now, on the other hand, do we want the government to ban the sale of records with lyrics the government doesn't like? Do we want the government to say this is okay, but this one will have to go? And who should be the government censor? Whose job should it be to listen all day to dirty records and decide whether you can? Do you want censorship of records as is now being proposed in Maryland and in congressional hearings? Or do you want to make the decision on your own? Take it or leave it, all by yourself. Bob?
Mr. Zappa, let me see if I can get your position straight. Are you saying that there is no filth, no pornography, no obscenity that should not be permitted to be sold and distributed freely in this country in the form of music videos and rock music?
I don't think that music qualifies as pornography. And especially since this whole business started with words. We're talking about words here.
All right.
All the complaints were about words.
All right, take the pornography out there. Is there no filth, no obscenity that you think would qualify to be suppressed?
We're talking about words, and I don't believe that there is any word that needs to be suppressed. There's no scientific or realistic reason why you should keep people from hearing certain words.
Yeah, but Mr. Zappa,
let me just follow that up.
There are certain words you use that are to describe an act of fornication which are brutal.
So?
Well,
how about putting that on the radio? That's not permitted to be put on the radio. Do you think it should be?
Yes.
You think it should be on the radio?
Absolutely.
And on television?
Absolutely.
And
in politics.
I don't think I understand
because
that.
It's already in politics. I think that if you use the so-called strong words, you get your point across faster, and you can save a lot of beating around the bush.
Well,
why are people afraid of words?
Well, look, Mr. Zappa, we're not talking about just words. When we talk about rock videos, we're
not talking about rock videos.
I beg your pardon, but
the whole thing is words.
I beg your pardon, but what they're trying to
they're selling it with rock videos.
What they're trying to restrict in Maryland is also obscene rock videos.
No, they are not.
Well, they are. They're trying to apply the obscenity language to videos and to records. But why do you underestimate the power of words? Words have consequences. They have impact on people. Now, I agree with you that the first line of responsibility is the family to stop the kind of garbage that we're talking about here today. But good grief, can't we call on our government to help us in this fight, Frank? I mean, you have kids. Are you an anarchist? Is it the government's role to do nothing about this?
No, I'm a conservative, and you may not like that, but I am. And the fact of the matter is, this bill that they're talking about in Maryland is stupid.
How so? What is the function of government, Frank? The civil government. Isn't it to, in part, promote the general welfare and to help protect families?
Do you think that you're protecting somebody by taking away 7 words?
It's not just words.
It is words. It's about words.
Words also connote ideas, Mr. Zappa. Are you for songs that portray incest as just another kind of sex and perhaps even preferable sex? Are you for that?
Would you ban the mention of any incestual activities? Would you?
Well, why don't we make a pact?
Then why don't you better take a look at the Bible and see what's in there, what happens after Sodom and Gomorrah.
The Bible does not advocate incest.
But it
condemns it, Frank.
It mentions it.
Well, we're talking about advocacy, Mr. Zappa.
No, we're not. We're talking about words.
No, we're not talking about just
content of the words.
Oh, you don't think words connote ideas, huh?
Yes, they can be assembled into sentences that get ideas
Well, how about
across.
answering my question about incest? Do you support records that promote incest as just another kind of sex, or in some instances it might even be preferable? Do you agree with that?
No, I don't agree with it. I have no interest in incest, but I don't think that anybody in his right mind would desire to have the government step in to make sure that they install a censor board that keeps certain things from being said.
Let me ask you something, Mr. Zappa.
Because sometimes the dumbest thing that gets said makes the point for you. And if a person is doing a song about incest, it gives you a chance to say, maybe incest is really wrong. I didn't realize that incest was such a terrible problem in the United States that we suddenly needed government intervention to cure incest in America by keeping words off of records.
Well, of course, incest in America didn't used to be such a terrible problem, did it, Mr. Zappa? That's come about in the last 20 years or so.
John, that's not so.
Oh, really?
Mr. Zappa,
not as a problem. Not advocated in songs.
I understand your position on government censorship, but just you're a musician, you're a producer, you're a big man in show business. Do you think it is a good idea? Let's not say that the government's going to get in this all. Just as a matter of taste, of artistic preference, you think it's a good idea to write lyrics that says incest is good for you? Does that make any sense?
Well, it might make sense to Prince. That's his business, because that's mainly the song that they're talking about.
But don't you have an opinion on it?
My opinion is he's got a right to sing it, he's got a right to say it, and I got a right to not buy it.
Where does that right come from, Mr. Zappa? Where does the right to advocate incest come from?
That song does not advocate incest.
No, there are songs that advocate incest.
Tell me them. I haven't heard them.
Well, you ought to get out more. And I don't think you're being candid with us. You know what those songs are. Now, you said there's a right to do this. Where does the right come from? Your group was called the Mothers of the Invention.
Mothers of Invention. You got to get out more.
Yeah, and you're a very inventive guy. You make up a lot of stuff, like what was in the mind of the founding fathers. Would you look in the camera and tell them?
Which camera?
Any camera. And tell them.
Directing the show now?
Yeah, that's right. Well, you certainly need some direction, Mr. Zappa.
Want to spank me here? Come on, what are you trying to do?
Oh, you into that too, huh? No, I'm not into spanking.
I love it when you froth like that.
Sure. Now, would you tell our viewers that what the founding fathers...
I thought he was going to be the one frothing today. I'm glad that you're doing it.
Wrong again, Frank. Wrong again. Now,
I got a napkin for you.
Would you tell us? Excellent. Thank you very much.
Him too.
Now, would you look in the camera and tell them with a straight face that you think the founding fathers had in mind the kind of garbage you sing and write when they drafted the First Amendment? Do you really believe that, Mr. Zappa?
I don't think it applies. The founding fathers, for one thing, kept slaves, and take a look at what Benjamin Franklin used to do over at the Hellfire Club.
But you have repeatedly...
Not exactly a bunch of swell guys. I think they had some good things in mind, but we have a document, the letter of the law. Yeah. Let's use the letter of the law and interpret it based on the 20th century.
It is relevant because you have repeatedly, in opposing even ratings for rock music, you have repeatedly cited the Constitution and the First Amendment. Do you think the founding fathers really had the First Amendment, that they gave us the First Amendment to defend songs that glorify Satanism and incest and suicide? Do you really believe that?
Absolutely.
You really believe that?
Yeah, I believe it.
You're an idiot then. You're an idiot.
Well, I'll tell you what. Kiss my... How do you like that?
Take your teeth out. Take your teeth out and we'll talk business.
All right, fellas, let's cool it off.
Come on, let's take this seriously. Come on, let's froth.
This government...
Over to me, Mr.
Zappa. One thing you did I didn't think you'd do is you ducked a question. I thought you'd
ask. Which one?
I understand your position on the government. I understand you have an absolutist position on the First Amendment. A lot of people have an absolutist position. But I asked you a question and you ducked it. I want you to tell me if you think that the lyrics saying that incest is a good thing have any artistic value or are in good taste, or if you approve them. You must have some standards of your own. I'm not talking about the government.
You asked me for my opinion. I don't enjoy that kind of material. I'm not here to sell records for Prince or anybody else.
Yeah, but you defend it being sold, don't you?
Yes, I do defend it.
Well, then you're part of the problem.
Well, don't you think it would be a good thing to say to some of these people to cool it?
No, it's not my job.
What is your job?
My job is to represent myself.
What is your job? You once wrote a song called We're Only in It for the Money.
It's not a song, it's the name of an album.
Is that right?
You ought to get out more.
Yeah. How much money you made peddling this stuff, Mr. Zappa?
Millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Millions of dollars, Mr. Lofton.
All right, look, it seems to me, Mr. Zappa, that you've got to ask these people, both of them are on you, what they would propose.
He's accusing me of doing something that is similar to what that is being argued about. My lyrics aren't in question here.
Well,
really? They're not.
What would you propose, Mr. Lofton, as the means of censorship?
Well, I said I agree with Mr. Zappa that the first line of defense and responsibility is the parents. But what I do not agree with is that the parents have to stand alone, and we are not entitled to call upon our government to help us in the fight against this kind of filth.
Wait a minute, John. What government censor is going to decide for you?
It's not... Tom, I've heard you say repeatedly on this show that we are our government, that we're allowed to call on our government.
Well, you have to have a man who is the censor, or a woman.
The way it would
they
work.
have to decide this
Tom.
Lofton can hear and this Lofton cannot hear.
Tom, it would work the way the implementation of any law works. You pass a law, it has words in it, and then the elected representatives of the people try their best to apply it. It's the way you do it with everything else. Will they apply it perfectly? No. But we're entitled to use the force of our civil government to help protect our families. How could you oppose that? Does the government have any purpose, Frank?
Yeah, it has a number of purposes.
What is it?
I'm not going to give you a civics lesson here, but I'll tell you one thing. We must not see eye to eye on the idea of a government that must forbid things in order to protect
Really? What is
families.
the government's role? You've told me several times what it shouldn't do.
How about national defense?
Yeah, I consider this